Hello everybody, we are back with our final Stanley Cup preview for the first round, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Winnipeg Jets. And before we start, I wanted to say please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new to me, new to hockey, whatever the case may be. I'd love to have you here along the way as I try to do this as a career, so subscribe if you want. If not, no big deal. Now, let's get on into it. And how did we get here? Well, we got here by seeing Vegas put together a great year. They ended up winning their division, last game of the season, ended up clinching the top spot out west, and also the last game of the season, while dealing with so many goalie injuries, it wasn't even funny. Robin Leonard was out for the year before the season even started, and then proceeded to have even more goalie issues before going on and getting the top seed out west, and that's good for them. As for the Jets, they took off towards the beginning of the year, tapered off a little bit, and then ended up finishing out the year pretty well, winning 5 of their last 7 games to clinch the final spot in the Western Conference. And now we'll get to see these two sides meet again for the first time since the 2018 Western Conference Final. You probably remember that because that was Vegas's inaugural season, where they ended up going up to the Stanley Cup Final, and we thought they might win it. Washington ended up doing the job there. So, what are some storylines, though, having said that, to watch out for this series? The first one is my favorite, possibly the whole playoffs, so get ready for this. Jack Eichel finally gets to make his playoff debut. This is so great. I think many of us have been waiting for this for a long time, and it feels unreal. Jack was taken second overall in the 2015 draft behind Connor McDavid, legend by the way, if you didn't know, and has seen pretty turbulent time in the league, Eichel that is. While his play has been good, if you just look at simple stats, you can look at advanced metrics too if you want, but you can just look at simple stats and see he's averaged almost a point per game, and he's played almost 500 games. He's got 446 points in 476 games played, and he was able to have success even when his team wasn't able to do so. Not his fault, and the Sabres, to be honest, at times were an absolute dumpster fire during that era, and everyone knew most years they'd be a bottom feeder. Yes, there were some years that were better than others, and there was one year that I think it was a former Penguins head coach. The Penguins head coach ended up winning the Cups in the late 2000s with the Penguins. Of course, I'm blanking on his name. They had a year there that looked promising, but other than that, it was pretty rough. And the trip to the postseason never materialized. Things in Upper New York started to get from bad to worse going in that direction as Eichel wasn't playing, and instead he was consulting with other doctors about an injury he had. It was like a spinal disc thing, and you knew he was not going to give in. Not to say that I blame him at all. If that is an injury that serious, you do what's best for you, and you know, if they don't want you to do it, that's okay. I think a lot of people get mad at these players and these guys that have money just because they have money and say, well, I wouldn't be able to do this at my job. That's not necessarily a good thing. Like, if you are hurt in something like that, in that situation, and you hurt your back and work said, we're not going to pay for that surgery, you have to, come to work and you're not going to get the surgery, that's problematic. So I don't understand, how that kind of boiled over and things got to be bad there. But he went from being this beloved top draft pick that, was a hometown hero for a team. Not he wasn't a hometown hero, but he's from Boston, played Boston over there. But a guy that went from being a great player on a bad hometown team to being public enemy number 1 with some comments kind of came out. Things got to be worse, where feeling kind of took over. Things got to be dramatic. You know how it goes. But anyway, he ended up getting shipped off to Sin City, and his first year there, it wasn't even a full season. They didn't make the playoffs. That was frustrating. I was kind of okay with Vegas not, just because they consistently were able to get there, but I was, also thinking that they really would have been a great team to watch with Eichel here. So nearly a decade after being drafted, the 26-year-old can finally get his first taste of playoff hockey, and I just think it's great for the league to see these guys that are taken high in the draft, that pan out and are just able to find some success, because again, he had personal success, but there was no team success. Buffalo, ironically, is doing relatively well, probably the best they've done even during his era and even before then. But in general, it is great to see him happy and in a situation where he feels like he's in a good environment. So we'll see, and we'll get to see if he puts on a show. As for the second topic, we'll see if Josh Morrissey can be a common name after this series. Morrissey was taken with the 13th overall pick in the 2013 draft and has proceeded to play 501 regular season games for the Jets. However, he's probably not a name you would throw out for the Norris conversation year in and year out on this basis. But I do think he's a guy that kind of is not a fringe, household name or something like that. If you're into hockey, you probably know who Morrissey is, and you know that he is typically a good player and has been with Winnipeg for a while. But this year has been an absolutely incredible year for him. Career high in goals and assists with 16 goals, 59 assists for a 75-point season. He's been one of the best offensive players for the Jets this year, and if this is the new norm for his production, for himself and for the team, they are going to be, as the phrase, tickled pink, as he signed an 8-year extension back in 2019, and it was a pretty good bargain if you're going to get 75 points out of him in defensive value. Morrissey was one of those guys everybody was hyping up, talking about, why are we not talking about him for the Norris? Why is he not being thrown out there for the contender for the Norris? Blah, blah, blah. I don't think he's going to get it. But I will say that if this is the norm and he continues to play like this in this series and further on in the playoffs, holy cow, watch out for him, as he could be a guy that we talk about in the Norris for years to come. I'm going to try to do a deep dive once the playoffs die down to see if this success is replicable. And if it is, of course, that's good. If not, no big deal. But yeah, we'll see if he can be that household name by the end of the series. As for another topic here, we're going to be talking about, will Vegas have to play musical chairs in net? Vegas, of course, like I said at the beginning of the video, has dealt with a lot of injuries all year, using 5 tennies during their season. And still the question must be asked, who is going to start the series and who will finish it? As of right now, you'd probably say Laurent Brossoit. I say it wrong every time. I've heard so many pronunciations from announcers that we're just going to say LB. And LB is probably the best shot of being the starter in between the pipes for game 1, as he has dealt with injuries, has only played 11 games, but things have gone really well for him since April. He's won 5 games, and those were against the Minnesota Wild twice, the Seattle Kraken twice, the game that also won them the division and the top seed in the West. And I want to say the LA Kings was sandwiched in between 2 games with Minnesota, LA, Seattle. He had a .946 save percentage in that time, so pretty incredible there. Again, you kind of wonder, is he going to be the best option since the sample size is small and he has had those injuries? And yeah, it's been really sporadic. I think he went back down to the HL for a bit, got injured, came back, got injured again, came back. I don't know, but I do know that probably looking at just the recent games, he probably would be the best bet. As for the next best option, you're looking at Jonathan Quick. The Golden Knights made a smart move by getting Quick from the Jackets after he was traded from the Kings to the Jackets. He said he didn't want to be in Ohio, kind of like we covered in one of the other preview videos. And it looks like it could have worked out pretty well for Vegas and him because they needed a goalie. He's got experience, and if he clicks, he's going to be a good backup goalie, at least for this playoff stretch. If he can take over as a starter, that'd be ideal, but I know that he has had more downs and ups in recent years. But on a good Vegas team like this, you might just be able to see them have another run. He hasn't looked very dominant with Vegas, but he also hasn't had one of those games where you look at it and you say, holy cow, this guy needs to retire, he needs to be done. It's been more like 3 or 4 goals allowed on 28 to 34, 35 shots, something like that. Not great. But if he can lock in a little bit more, just allow 3 goals in the playoffs, something like that, you're probably looking at him being at least a reliable backup for this playoff run. Either way, you'd probably like to have Logan Thompson at least in net there, but his status for this series is weird, seeing that he isn't skating yet and that he isn't being rolled out. So I don't know if he'll be able to return, but maybe for Vegas, if he can get healthy, that would be just the creme de la creme news for them. And again, just like all the other things, this one is one that I don't know how to go, so we really will see. As for the final topic is, can Winnipeg's big name players be good enough to win this round? I don't think this is a David versus Goliath type situation here with Vegas and Winnipeg, especially because we look at the Golden Knights situation. Again, in the crease, not ideal. However, it is pretty clear that Vegas is the better team, but still, I think for the Jets, if they can get guys like Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and those 3 especially there to get going, they're going to be in a good spot. That trio accounted for 41% of Winnipeg's goals this year, and the scoring drop-off is pretty steep. Morrissey was the 4th leading goal scorer on the team with 16. Great for defenseman, don't get me wrong. But these 3 right here are going to have to get it done for their team if they want to be able to get going and to possibly get the most out of this group, because again, Winnipeg on paper has some guys that you're pretty excited about, but is a team that they haven't done much since that 2018 run. But luckily for them, they have an ace up their sleeve that they hope will pan out. And that other big star that we could talk about is none other than Connor Hellebuyck. And Connor is a former Vezina winner. That's an absolute workhorse. You just know that he's going to be able to give you a bunch of starts, and he's probably going to do like 60 to 65 in a season. He's going to put together good numbers. Maybe they're not going to look studly, but at the same time, they're going to be good. And Winnipeg has had some bad defensive teams over the years. He was able to win a Vezina. He's still a guy that you would really trust here. Just like some other underdogs that I talk about in these previews, having a good goalie or hot goalie can really get you to go a long way. And for Winnipeg, they're in a very fortunate spot to have a goalie of his caliber, even though other teams would, not have that fortune. And for Connor, he's a guy that has a lot of regular season starts, but has playoff starts as well. So that is going to be big if he can hold his ground. And even if he gets peppered with shots, I could see him getting 48 shots against and giving up 2, something like that. So I really, really could see him being the difference maker for this and possibly seeing a pretty big upset. Again, Winnipeg, not a team that you would say you'd expect to win the Stanley Cup, and Vegas would be a team you'd pick more. So I would say that this is one of those things where Connor could do a lot of damage to people's brackets. So having said all this, who am I going to pick in this series? The last preview of this series. Also, please make sure to check that out, by the way, on my playlist at the end of the video if you're interested in the other previews. But for this preview pick, I am going to be picking the Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games. Vegas is the better team. We know that, and they dealt with adversity. I know people will say, well, Winnipeg dealt with adversity. So did Vegas. They dealt with 5 different goaltenders this season. They were throwing out Aiden Hill. They had somebody else out there. They had Quick. They had Thompson. They had LB Brissall. And for them, they were able to put together a great year, and they were able to claim the top spot out west when there was other teams like Dallas and Colorado pushing really hard. So I think for myself, I would expect Hellebuyck to keep this team in the games and maybe their trio to do some damage a game or two. I don't expect them to be good enough to get over the hump, but we will see. Who are you going to pick for this series? Who do you think will win this series? Why and in how many games? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. And forgive me, again, I am on 3.5 hours of sleep. I am feeling exhausted. Still a lot to do today. Anyway, everybody stay safe. Have a great night, and you go of hockey all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.